Hello everyone, my name is Seth, and today I'm going to give you my review of The Last of Us Season 2. I absolutely loved the first Last of Us game, and I still liked Part 2. I did have my issues with it. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but I still did enjoy The Last of Us Part 2. I really like the first season, and I was excited to see what they did with a Season 2. I think this was their chance to maybe change some things here and there, maybe try to fix things that maybe didn't quite work as well as maybe they intended in the game. But unfortunately, I do not think that this season was anywhere near as successful as the first season. But before we go any farther, go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. We're almost at 300 subscribers, so if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And if you're not new here, share this video around with any friends or family. It could really help the channel grow and absolutely make my day. So, like I said, I actually liked the second game. I know there were a lot of people who didn't. It's honestly one of the most controversial games maybe ever, but I did end up liking the game. Not everything they were going for in the game really worked for me like they intended, and I did have some legit issues with the game, not just the issues that are like, oh, I don't like that Joel died, or I don't like how Joel died. I think pacing was really the biggest issue I had with the game. I think pacing is the reason why I never really could connect with the character of Abby. When I was playing her side of the story, whenever I would die, I'd be like, okay, that's it. Yay, game's over. I did not like Abby. They wanted you to end up liking her, but that never worked for me, and the pacing was just all over the place. I did not like that in the game, but the game was still good enough. It had good enough performances. The story overall was still good enough. The visuals were amazing, and the gameplay was absolutely incredible, so I kept going, and I ended up enjoying the game, even though I disagreed with some of the story choices toward the end of the game, and, like I said, the pacing was pretty bad. This season, I thought, was an opportunity to really look and examine what worked, what didn't with the game. You can really take a look and then fix it for the show. I don't necessarily think they did that here. I think they tried to make some changes, but I think the changes ended up honestly kind of causing more problems than they fixed. I was really excited. I thought they were going to make some relatively big changes to maybe even the structure that would help with the pacing. Like right from the beginning, we get that scene with Abby and her friends right from the beginning of the show. And I think getting a little bit more of Jackson there at the beginning of this story was a really great idea. And that battle there at the beginning at Jackson was one of the best kind of like zombie big scale battles I've ever seen on TV. But I would say that pacing is still an issue. I would even say it's just as big, if not a bigger issue here in this show. I think this season is way too short. Now, I got on to Marvel and Disney for their little 6-episode seasons. That doesn't work. Well, I'm going to get on to HBO here too. A 7-season show does not work. I feel like we kind of had to rush through a lot of what Ellie and Dina were doing in Seattle. But this whole 6-7-episode season, that doesn't work. I feel like when you do that, you're kind of like stuck in the middle of, oh, do I want to make a movie or do I want to make a show? But there's enough content here where you could have made this season at least 10 episodes. That would have made the pacing a little bit better. But the whole structure of the show is basically the same as the game, so they make kind of the same pacing issue there that the game did. I will say slight spoilers for the show, but the game has been out for a few years now at this point. In this season, we see Ellie's side of things in Seattle, and it leads up to the confrontation with Abby. And then at the end, it shows that next season is going to be Abby's side of things. I think that was definitely a mistake for probably a couple of reasons. That was something that absolutely killed the pacing and the momentum in the game, and I think it's basically kind of going to do the same thing here for the show. I was hoping they'd rework things and make the structure better, but they didn't. Another reason I think this was a mistake is that I think there are so many people who just are watching the show who know nothing about the games, who had similar emotions that the players did when they first played the game. And there are even some players who, when that change happened, when you were going to control Abby, they literally just put the game down and just did not play it. And that's with it going right to the next part of gameplay. Like the controller is still in your hands, but now people are going to have to wait maybe 2 years for the next part of the story. And if they know it's going to focus on Abby, it is so much easier for them just to check out. But I will say, even with them keeping the same structure as the game, there still are some more pacing issues that they had here that really weren't in the game. I feel like we cut out a lot of Ellie clashing with the WLF, and her hunting down Abby's friends just kind of feels like whatever. It kind of felt rushed, and there really wasn't a lot of buildup when I feel like there probably should have been. The show this season also kind of has this need to explain everything. They over-explain things. They explain way too much, and they do not leave enough up to the audience interpretation. They do a lot of tell, don't show, when in reality it should be the opposite. Show, don't tell. That's what we need. Also, I do not know if the mic is picking this up, but we are having a big thunderstorm outside right now, so just bear with me audio-wise if you hear anything. I think now is a good time to talk about some of the character changes. Some are good. That's a little bit more rare in this season, while most of the character changes aren't that good. Tommy is one of the main reasons why Ellie and Dina go to Seattle in the game, but in the show, I just feel like Tommy doesn't have a lot to do. I don't mind them changing some of the details about Tommy's story in the show, but I feel like this left Tommy with absolutely nothing to do all season. He wasn't even there when Joel died like he was in the game, and on the surface, that change is fine, but you have to have a bigger reason for it. I feel like the couple of changes they made just kind of took away anything that Tommy had to do. I think one of the biggest issues I have in this season, though, is I feel like they softened Ellie's character so much. They changed her character so much from what it is in the game. It's almost like they were afraid of her becoming too unlikable. But honestly, that's a decision that should be up to the audience's interpretation. And the audience honestly should probably be taken aback a little bit by some of Ellie's actions. But they cut back and they change so much that it just doesn't have the character development, it doesn't have the impact that it needs. She's so angry and aggressive and brutal in the game, but that's basically non-existent in the show. At one point in the show, she wants to kind of blow up her cover to stop the WLF from attacking a Scar. And while, yeah, you might could see that as virtuous, that's not really Ellie's character. In the game, if something like that were to happen, Ellie would have taken advantage of that. And that's kind of the whole point, though. Ellie does change over the course of the game and over her time in Seattle. She really pushes how far she'll go, and she does kind of turn into a monster. And it's just not that way in the show. In the show, she's just way too similar to the 13-year-old we met at the beginning of season 1. And while I understand wanting to maybe soften the character a little bit just for your average TV audience, I think that's a mistake. I think that takes away a lot of the development, and it takes away a lot of the nuance from the character. And in the show, Ellie just doesn't seem like she's as capable as she is in the game. I mean, in the show, she accidentally kills 2 people when in the game it was 100% on purpose. But she only kills like 2 or 3 people here in the show, and that is a big contrast to the game. I understand there's gameplay there involved, but I think part of the high kill count in the game should have been translated to the show because it's kind of important to the story and her character development. And I think there's too many times in this season where Ellie just feels kind of dumb, but it's not like I feel like she should never need help or anything like that. She's not this perfect strategist or perfect survivalist, but she's very intelligent and she knows what she's doing. But there's sometimes where she is just forced to rely on characters way too often. And like I mentioned, she just kind of feels dumb. She kind of feels like an idiot at times. Sometimes she even feels like a sidekick to Dina. She doesn't feel like the main character. Maybe they tried to give her more comedic moments. Maybe they were trying to lighten the mood because The Last of Us 2 is a very dark story. But it's dark for a reason, and it's super impactful, and we just don't get that in the show. There's even some really odd interactions between Ellie and Jesse. In the show, they are very much so antagonistic against each other. While in the game, they don't always see eye to eye, but they still work well together. They're still friends. I can't call these two friends in the show. Their relationship here this season was just odd. I do actually like some of the changes to Dina. That was one of the biggest positives out of these character changes. I love how they give Dina a little bit more of a relationship with Joel, and it really reinforces why she would be willing to go with Ellie to Seattle. I think they made Dina more of a strong character. You get to see a little bit more of who she is. And honestly, I liked Dina in the show better than I did in the game. And Dina in this season had more of the anger that Ellie should have had. At times during the season, it kind of felt like Dina was the main character instead of Ellie. And sometimes Dina in the show felt more like game Ellie than show Ellie did. They changed one thing that I feel like changes Joel's decision to save Ellie. And I gotta say, I don't really like the change. He ends up saying that they could have made a cure. You could obviously say, well, that's just Joel's opinion. He could still be wrong. But either way, I like the idea of him not knowing whether they can or cannot make a cure, but he just acts anyway. And he makes that decision every single time, not knowing whether they could or could not make a cure. They also change a pretty big part in the story where Ellie presses Joel for information about what really happened in Salt Lake City and their 2-year gap of communication in the game. That scene isn't here, and it's a shame because it's one of the most emotionally impactful scenes in the game, but here it's just kind of chopped up and thrown into a couple of different scenes. I think the porch scene in this season does still hit you kind of hard, but mostly because of the performance that Pedro Pascal is giving. I feel like the emotional weight just isn't there in the show because of the story and the structural changes. Another thing here that I feel like was a little bit odd, they reintroduced spores after being so adamant that spores did not make sense and they weren't doing spores in the first season. At least they recognized their mistake, but I feel like to kind of keep continuity, they should have just kept it how it was. And while I did originally like that opening with Abby and her friends, I feel like that only works if you are going to kind of change up the structure. I don't think it works to basically lay out what's going to happen, to lay out their plan and change how we are introduced to Abby and her friends. In the original way that the story is told, you are supposed to hate them. You're supposed to hate Abby, but knowing basically from the beginning that Joel killed her dad, I don't think that works as well. Let's jump to some of the performances here. Some of the performances I thought were really kind of disappointing. I think Bella Ramsey did a really, really good job as Ellie in the first season, but unfortunately, I can't say the same thing here. I don't know what it is, but I feel like maybe she just fits the character of like the young 13-year-old Ellie better. So much of Bella Ramsey's performance in this was just so flat and uninspired. 80% of the time, she just kind of had this flat, expressionless look, like a 1,000-yard stare. There's no emotion, there's no nuance. And I don't get the rage and the anger from Ellie like I should. And I don't feel intimidated by Ellie at all, and I'm supposed to. I don't really think she had great chemistry with Isabella Merced either, and you really need Ellie and Dina to work together. Part of it could be the writing, but I don't think her performance did the writing any favors. All of the stuff with Pedro Pascal, either in present day or the flashbacks, was awesome. You never realized how much Pedro Pascal really carried this show until this season. All of the big emotional moments in this season are because of Pedro Pascal. He's such an incredibly talented performer, and you see why in this show. I think Isabella Merced does a great job. She helps bring more life to a character I thought was kind of like whatever in the game. She seemed so natural in this role, and she made me like the character of Dina more than I did in the game. She has a pretty big range here in this season, and I just really enjoy her performance. Kaitlyn Dever is good in the little bit of time she's in this season, and I just know she's going to do an excellent job carrying season 3. They got a bigger budget here for the season, and you can definitely tell. The sets, all of the extras, the scale of the infected, the action sequences all show the enhanced budget. The sets look amazing. All of the makeup on the affected looks incredible. The CGI that is in this show is really good. It's very solid. I think the cinematography in this show is really beautiful. All of the technical on-set stuff was really good. But overall, I have to say that this season was just very disappointing. I feel like a lot of the changes that they made trying to fix a problem from the game ended up being worse. It is unfortunate because the game, even with its pacing issues and some story decisions that I don't like, it still had some amazing gameplay, incredible performances, and some other things like that to help you push through, even the parts that are kind of like, whatever. But the pacing in this show also isn't great. It might be a little bit worse than the game. The changes to the characters, I feel like, undermine the original stories and the character development in the game. And they feel the need to just over-explain kind of everything. Other than Pedro Pascal and Isabella Merced, we don't really get any standout performances, and I'd have to say that Bella Ramsey honestly isn't that good in this season. But a lot of the technical stuff, like the sets, the makeup, the CGI, the cinematography, were all great. If you watch my channel for a little bit, you know I don't really give scores to seasons of TV or TV shows. I feel like it's a little bit more difficult because it's not one contained, like, 2.5 hour, 2 hour experience. So one score doesn't quite do a whole show justice. But if I did give scores, this season definitely would be like a maybe 2 out of 5. And if you catch me in the right, or I guess wrong mood, maybe a 1.5 out of 5. But that's it. That's my review of The Last of Us Season 2. Have you seen the show? Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. Did you think that they messed up on some of the changes from the game to the show? Do you think the show did it much better than the game? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. You can follow me on social media pretty much anywhere, @CinemaSeth, and I'll see you next time.